Welcome, everyone, to today's Learning Tuesday event. We will begin the webinar shortly. It is being recorded, and we will share that recording with you following the webinar, along with any resources that come up. As we get started, we encourage you to follow us on Twitter at Reading by Third and also on Facebook at Campaign for GLR. We've got two hashtags that we're using. The first is hashtag GL Reading, and the second hashtag is Learning Tuesdays. So you can use that to join the conversation and continue the conversation. We'll get started in just a couple of moments.
Hello and welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for GLR Learning Tuesdays webinar, Cornerstone for Early School Success, Head Start from 2Gen to AI. My name is Sarah Torian, and I'm a consultant with the Campaign for Grade Level Reading, and I'm helping to coordinate the GLR Learning Tuesdays webinar series. Before we get started today, I just wanted to go over a couple of really quick housekeeping details. First is I'd encourage you to introduce yourself using the chat box function on the side of the screen. Show your name, organization, and the GLR coalition that you're a part of, if you're a part of a GLR coalition. Also, wanted to share that all webinar attendees will be participating in listen-only mode during the webinar, and that's to avoid any background noises or distractions during our presentations. But we strongly encourage your engagement throughout the webinar and invite you to post any questions that come to you during the presentations in the chat box or also during the Q&A portion of the webinar. And I will be pulling those out and sharing them with our presenters so that we can hear their responses. Wanted to reiterate what Suzanne shared about this webinar being recorded, and that a link to this recording and the slide deck and other resources that are referenced during the webinar will be sent to all who registered for today's webinar in an email that will go out on Monday. So keep an eye out for that. Also wanted to give you a heads up that we will be posting a very brief survey poll after the presentations are complete and during the Q&A period. And really encourage you to take just a couple of moments to share your thoughts and feedback in that survey. It will help us inform our planning for these conversations as we're moving into the next year and the next decade. Now just wanted to give a little bit of background and context about GLR Learning Tuesdays. As you can see on the screen, we have a number of really great sessions planned for the coming weeks, always on Tuesdays, always starting at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. And we're hoping that this predictable and reliable schedule will make it easier for you and others to make plans to join in for these conversations regularly. Having already hosted 11 webinars since the launch of GLR Learning Tuesdays in September, I would also encourage you to take a moment to visit CLIP, the campaign's Community Learning for Impact and Improvement platform, to find the growing archive of webinar recordings, slide decks, and other resources that are being posted there from these webinars. And I also hope you'll continue to save this date and time and make plans to join in for more of these great learning events. We're very excited about today's webinar with the National Head Start Association. As everybody on this webinar knows, there's a growing body of research that underscores the importance of comprehensive, quality early childhood education and development services tailored to help both young children and their parents.
They're in talks. I don't know when they're open, probably in the fall.
We believe that Head Start represents a cornerstone to support children's early school success because of its comprehensive whole child, whole family approach, its commitment to quality, and its vast scale, extending into communities across the country, including urban, rural, tribal, and immigrant communities.
Sarah, this is Suzanne. Hold just a moment. I'm going to mute everyone and then unmute you. Just a moment.
Reopen the H.S. Thompson over there.
Okay, Sarah, go right ahead.
Thank you. Apologies for that. There are many opportunities for local funders and stakeholders to build upon that cornerstone, and we're very excited to explore just a few of those opportunities in today's webinar. And so to begin that conversation, I'm very excited to welcome and introduce Jennifer Grassam, who will be moderating today's webinar. Jennifer is the Vice President of Grants at the J.F. Maddox Foundation in Hobbs, New Mexico, where she oversees all of the foundation's grant-related activities and grant programs. A Hobbs native, Jennifer returned to her home community after a career in internal audit in the corporate sector and is now working with her colleagues to improve the lives of people throughout Lee County, New Mexico by investing in education, social services, and community development. So welcome, Jennifer. Thank you so much for agreeing to moderate today's conversation.
Thank you, Sarah. And as moderator, it is my pleasure to introduce our first panelist, Yasmina Vinci. Yasmina is the Executive Director of the National Head Start Association. She came to National Head Start Association after several years as principal and founder of Edge Consulting Partners. She founded Edge after receiving her master's in public administration from Harvard Kennedy School of Government, and her experience is grounded in service as Executive Director of child care programs serving low-income families, and as Development Director for a cluster of nonprofit child care centers. In state government, she supervised Head Start research, administered the federal dependent care grant, and planned for New Jersey's implementation of the very first child care and development block grant. As the first executive director of Child Care Aware of America, in collaboration with the American Academy of Pediatrics and academic partners, she built the first bridges between child health and child care professionals. In her current role, responding to the need of Head Start programs to measure their progress in parent, family, and community engagement, Yasmina raised funding to produce Parent Gauge, a measurement tool which is used to inform continuous quality improvement as well as to produce analytics for further use. She currently serves on numerous advisory boards as a contributing member of the World Forum on Early Care and Education, and is one of Results for America's Moneyball for Government nonprofit All-Stars. We're so lucky you're here today, Yasmina. So my first question is, could you set the scene for what Head Start is and share a bit about what you see as the foundational principles for Head Start?
Thank you very much. You can see from my background that it looks like I've prepared all my life for this particular role and even for this conversation. So we have a brief slide on the Head Start, on the history of Head Start. And interestingly, we're now in a time where we talk about design thinking in designing programs, not sort of just doing random policy making the way most programs are done. In 1964, caused by or led by research in the causes of poverty and the impacts on education, led to Project Head Start. It was designed by an interdisciplinary group, very much with the goal of disrupting poverty, and all the things that have been designed by the group or built by the group into the program, such as providing the children with a comprehensive program to meet the emotional, social, health, nutritional, psychological, and cognitive development. Head Start from the very beginning has been culturally responsive to the communities, and it was expected from the start that communities had to be invested fully. That's why, and the term of art was maximum feasible participation. And the interesting thing about that is that Head Start has pretty much, with all the adaptations and all the different things, has remained actually valid to that model of caring for the whole child, the whole family, and being very much connected to the community. And that's where I feel the great connection to CGLR is in that community role and focus on the young children and on all children. The funding goes, it's a federal to local structure because at the time of Head Start's beginnings, there were some issues in state government about the equitable distribution of funds. This Head Start model, and I think you've already referred to it in the introduction, Sarah has, That the federal to local funding structure is really important because there is a uniformity of standards and expectations for quality and expectations for the program. And it's called performance standards. And so that's being uniform around the country in all the communities. It's a birth to five model, and we'll talk a little later about how that happened. Actually, the early Head Start came as an innovation to the original Head Start. It has the very first performance standards. I did some research, and there was nobody really talked about performance standards for early childhood education until Head Start had their first ones in 1970. They have evolved since. And the focus of Head Start is on the most vulnerable families and children first. Children who face barriers of poverty, whose families face drug addiction, foster children, homeless children, children with special needs. So Head Start really tries to make a difference and break that cycle of poverty for the vulnerable children and families. You have mentioned comprehensive services. That means that health and both mental health, dental health, physical health, very important. So is nutrition, but the families, the parent family engagement is considered the secret sauce, the really the success element of Head Start. It also, of course, has developmentally appropriate curriculum and instruction. Shared governance is important because it empowers parents. Our parent conference today, that we just had so many fathers and mothers who are heading policy councils, who are having a real say in what is happening in the programs that their children are participating in. And the most important part that has been with Head Start from day one is a culture of understanding and respect. And Head Start is everywhere. There is a map, there's a heat map of it. And I think the states that have more sparse, have populations that are more sparse, but Head Start is in urban areas, rural areas, migrant communities, Native American communities. It really, truly is everywhere. You'll see it also in the corner in Puerto Rico and in Hawaii and in some of the Pacific Islands. So, and it's organized in several regions, and actually 10 regions, plus the migrant and seasonal Head Start and the Native American Head Start.
Yasmina, when we've talked before, you talked about a foundational principle of Head Start is the 2-gen approach. Head Start's been taking a whole child, whole family approach since the beginning. What efforts have you seen that are particularly successful?
So there are two. There are several ways that Head Start. From in the very beginning, parents were really they were volunteering, and then they would be sent to. I just heard today the director of the Office of Head Start talk about a letter she had about a parent who came with just a high school degree, who had been homeless, and then when she enrolled her child in Head Start, the parent then had the CDA, the Child Development Associate credential. Then she proceeded to have her associate degree, then 2 bachelor's degrees, 2 master's degrees, and right now she is a candidate for a doctorate. So Head Start certainly advances the and on our website we have some papers, some brief papers on the advantage of advancing the families. We also have many community partnerships that have helped the Head Start families really get to the whole idea of participating in the workforce. We had folks who were getting healthcare administration certification. There's the apprenticeship program in YMCA of East Bay, where the young people in the community and the parents are being getting apprenticeships, and it's really the first step on the career in early childhood education. We know of a case in Mississippi where the healthcare field really needed a large number of phlebotomy specialists, and the Head Start over several years, over 500 people were trained and certified to work in the healthcare field. So the clue or the way to get to the innovation is the fact that Head Start works with the communities, with the employers in the community, with the philanthropists in the community, to create the opportunities and to meet the needs of the community, and also advance the family's well-being.
Perfect. Well, thank you. I now want to bring into the conversation two funders to talk about the roles that local funders can play in recognizing Head Start as a cornerstone for early school success. Gladys Montes is the Vice President of the United Way Center for Excellence in Early Education for the United Way of Miami-Dade. With nearly 30 years of experience in the field, Gladys has devoted her life to helping young children get off to the best possible start in school and life. A champion for high-quality early childhood education, Gladys joined United Way of Miami-Dade in 2004 to spearhead the creation of the United Way Center for Excellence in Early Education and its demonstration school. As Vice President of the Center, Gladys is at the helm of a collaborative project that is changing the way people define school readiness in Miami-Dade and across the nation. Our other panelist is Mary Walachy. She is the Executive Director of the Irene E. and George A. Davis Foundation in Springfield, Massachusetts. Hired in 1997 to manage the affairs of the Davis Foundation, Mary is responsible for the development of the organization's strategic direction, general oversight of its administration, and developing proactive and new funding initiatives. In 2009, the Davis Foundation expanded its Cherish Every Child initiative to include READ, Reading Success by Fourth Grade, a comprehensive campaign to improve the reading proficiency of Springfield's children from birth to age 8. Under Mary's leadership, Springfield was twice named an All-American City by National Civic League, and the city has also been recognized as a Pacesetter community in 2012, 13, and 14. So Gladys, Mary, thank you both for sharing your experiences with us today. First, I want to ask Gladys, what spurred the United Way of Miami-Dade to invest in the launch of the United Way Center in Excellence in Early Education in 2007? And what does the center provide for enrolled children and its partner child care programs?
Thank you, Jennifer, and for the opportunity to share some of the things that we have been experiencing in the past 13 years. Like you were saying, most of the people that know United Way for their campaign for community impact in all of our communities. And it was, there was a time when that was the only role that our United Way was playing. And we decided to be a little bit more intentional in how we would bring high quality to Miami-Dade County in early childhood education. And that was the birth of the Center for Excellence, which is a center that it's meeting many of the needs for our community in early childhood. Our vision and our mission is to improve the quality of early care education, and not only that, but to make it accessible to more children in our community. So that's where we all started a while ago. Next slide. Very early in the planning of our project, we realized that this was something that we could not do it alone, that we needed to partner with others in the community that had been doing the work for a long time and that had been proven to be so effective in the way that they were working in the field of early childhood education. And that's when United Way partnered with Educare and HeadStart to start delivering the services of the program that we have now. This has been a very successful collaboration, and we have been able to learn from each other the very many ways in which we can impact our community. And when you think about our program, we always think about it in using three words. And it is the word of educate, demonstrate, and advocate. Those are the things that are going to guide the work that we're doing with our partners every day. When we talk about educate, we're talking about the training facility, our training arm. We have a training program for our community, and that is focusing on the 4 key elements of Educare as our partner, which is data utilization, the high quality teaching practices, intensive family engagement, and embedded professional development. These 4 areas are going to help us look at early childhood in a very unique way and bring to the United Way building many other collaborators in the community that want to learn and that want to share with us what they have been doing in all of these areas. These are the elements that we think that when we're talking about quality in early childhood are so important, and that we need to have first and foremost in our planning. Then the other areas that we have and we focus in our training program are the key elements for our program for the center in Miami-Dade in here. So the first, if we can go back to the slide before, just one tiny second. Yes. Okay, so the elements that we bring to it are coming from the practice that we have and that are examples in Head Start. One, the continuity of care and primary caregiver for our infants and toddlers. The next one is that we have our program focuses on a transition to bilingualism. This because Miami is such a diverse population, and that we needed to create an example for others on how to deal with this transition to bilingualism. It's not only moving children into the English language, but we want them to develop in both language, the home language and the English language. The next one is how important it is to have an inquiry-based program where everything that we do is based on the inquiry that children and families have in mind, and where we're focusing on intentionally planning and doing based on those inquiries. We have a STEM program that focuses on infants and toddlers and preschools and how do they see science and mathematical thinking in the world. And the next one is a capacity building program for directors in our community. We have many centers, 1,500 centers, licensed centers in Miami-Dade County. And there needed to be a place where we could come together and talk about what were the needs of those individuals who were directing programs, early childhood programs in our community.
Gladys.
Yes.
Oh, sorry. I was going to ask about that 5 years ago, the Center and the Early Learning Coalition of Miami-Dade Monroe received the Early Head Start Child Care Partnership Grants.
Yes, we did.
Could you talk to us about the impact that funding and partnership has had on your efforts?
Of course. So, after we were working with the demonstration school for such a long time and having so many lessons learned, we thought that we were ready to then apply now to be a grantee for Early Head Start, for the Early Head Start Partnership. And that's when we started our collaboration and we became a grantee for the Early Head Start Child Care Partnership. This partnership currently is servicing 520 children. We had 2 successful grant applications, so the total of the children that we're servicing now is 520 children. We have in our group not only childcare based providers, but we have 5 family childcare homes. And I think that one of the most important things that this has brought to us is the opportunity to work with sites that are located in Miami-Dade County Public Schools. So we offer the parents the opportunity to start their relationship with the public school really early in the lives of their children when they are infants, and they move all the way until they finish the elementary school. And the other, I think, exciting experience and opportunity that we have was to be in a shelter here in Miami-Dade County, the Lotus Village, which is a shelter that is servicing women who have suffered from many different obstacles in their life, and now they find themselves being part of a shelter. I think that the focus that we have in our grant was to increase the capacity of those that were already working with our partners, which are private providers in our community, to become more knowledgeable about what infant and toddlers need and what quality infant and toddler care is. To that end, we have graduated a number of individuals in our community with a CDA with a focus of infant and toddler. We provide to them very intentional and specific support so they can continue to grow and understand what is expected from them when they are caring for their children in their programs. And we have been working with our business providers to understand what it is a sustainable business that is focusing in high quality education for infants and toddlers.
Perfect. I understand that you're working with the University of Miami to evaluate your work. What results are you seeing from these efforts, and how is that informing your work going forward?
So maybe I think that we need to move like a number of slides down the road, and we're going to see in our slides some of the results that we received this year. So this year results are going to focus, the slides that we have are focusing not only on the increase of the capacity of the practitioners, which they are showing us when we measure them using the class, thank you, is that that this is important, and this is the kind of work that is going to grow slowly, but it's growing, it's steady, the growth is steady. On the first part of the slide, you're going to get to see a comparison of the two grants, and we have staff that started when we opened the grant, and we measure them when they were in year 3, and we see them how they continue to grow. And the other one is showing us what happened with the staff that is moving again in the same direction. Thank you, I love that. In the area of child-teacher interactions. The idea that we have with measuring the classes that we're going to be measuring staff on the year 3, year 5, and year 7. And we're focusing on those who are staying in the programs, so we can actually see the impact that the education and training is having on these teachers. When you look at the bottom, you're going to see the more seasoned staff that we have at the demonstration school. And again, what we're seeing is that in all of the areas, infant, toddler, as well as preschool, we have a steady growth, and we have staff that are performing at the highest level of the class. And when we have those that stay in the mid area, then we know that there's a plan that we need to put in place to continue to support and bring to these teachers more information, more opportunities of exchange with others to really hone into what happens in their classroom. The next slide that you're going to see is going to focus a little bit about the growth that is happening for children. This is in the Educare Miami, in the demonstration school. And what we are seeing now is that we have a steady growth in both of the languages. This is using the PLS-5, which is measuring children's growth in English and in Spanish. And what we see is that there is a consistent growth of these children in a parallel way, which is telling us that the model of exposing the children to both of the language in the classroom as well as at home is working in children expressive language as well as their receptive language. And this is the measure from the fall as we start the program, and then we measure during the springtime. Both of the times we can see how children are moving in a forward way. I think when we're talking in here a little bit, it's about what are the benefits of everything that we're doing in our programs. And I think that what we need to think about is that the benefit that is for families, when families are understanding their role as parents, and they are contributors to the work that we're doing with children. And at the same time, the amount of time that we spend with the children, changing and moving them to understand what is the question that they have about the world around them, and how is it that we're working with them.
Great. Mary, I'm going to transition to you. Can you tell me a little about the Davis Foundation in Springfield, Massachusetts?
Mary, I believe you've muted your phone.
I'm sorry about that. Thank you, Jennifer. And before I begin, let me just say thank you to the planners of this webinar. I really appreciate the opportunity to participate. Special thanks to Yasmina. I'm a little humbled to be a part of a group of such celebrated women, but I'll do my best to do my part. A little bit about Davis. I wanted to show everyone sort of our capacity, probably to send a message that small funders or funders that are community-based can really make some important moves and have impact in a community. And that, I think, is the case for the Davis Foundation, which, as you can see from the slide, was founded in 1970. We're pretty much a place-based funder in what we call Hampden County, Massachusetts, although I will say that we do support some advocacy and policy work on a statewide basis, and certainly some of the higher ed institutions, particularly that the family members of the Davis family were graduated from. You can see in the slide as well that we have 5 kind of key areas of focus. I won't read all of them to you, but at the top of the list is obviously our work in birth through 8, which is really the subject of our conversation today. The other thing I will add is, believe it or not, we are probably the largest funder in Hampden County, and that's not, as you can see, because we have zillions of dollars. Our grants are important, and we do give about approximately $5 million out, but we're largest because, unfortunately, there are not a lot of funders in Hampden County or even in Western Massachusetts. And while these are our 5 focus areas, we also actually fund in a number of other areas in sort of a general grant-making bucket, so that the arts organizations, health institutions, the museums, and others can certainly come and talk with us about their needs, even though they don't necessarily fall into the places where the Davis family has their biggest interest and where their passion is primarily. So we can move on to the next slide. I just wanted to give, again, we fund in other communities, but Springfield is the topic of our Educare project, so I just shared this slide with you just to give you some demographics about Springfield. I'll also say that the 2 primary communities that we focus on would be Springfield, Massachusetts, and Holyoke, Massachusetts, which unfortunately have the claim to fame to being, I think, 1 and 2 in terms of the poorest municipalities in the state of Massachusetts. And then secondarily, unfortunately, the school districts in Springfield and in Holyoke are 2 of the lowest performing school districts in the state of Massachusetts. So we have, I guess, our work cut out for us along with our important partners. You can move on to the next slide. I wanted to share this slide because it's my favorite little chart. I'm not sure I'm the most brilliant person on earth, but it's one that I enjoy. And the reason is I just see it as the way that we do our work, and I thought I'd share it. I believe that I got it from Grantmakers for Education several years ago, but if someone on this call or on this webinar wants to claim it, then I'll change my reference, because I actually don't remember where I got it, but I got it a long time ago. And basically what it says is, if you're a foundation and you're hoping to cause change, and in our case on this slide we have a picture of what I would maybe call a schoolhouse, is that funders need to work in the 4 corners of this particular graph. And so yes, we need to give out grants, maybe do loans, program-related investments, but in order to really create change in our communities, we also have to work in the other areas, which is fact-finding and analysis and testing. Moving on, we need to be collaborators, we need to convene our community, we initiate work, and then we obviously have to advocate. So I share that with you because I think it's the way, at least for Davis, we attack our work. It's not just about the grants, and in fact, I might say that in many cases our work is focused more in the three other areas of this graph rather than necessarily in the space of just grant making. The next slide, I won't, again, basically this is sort of the restating our work, which again talks about strategic grant making, convening stakeholders, engaging in policy work, in research and analysis, because we do believe that, again, to really create the kind of change that we're all trying to do in our communities and in our states, it really is about focusing in all these areas if we really want to have the kind of impact we need to have on children and families.
Mary, how has the Davis Foundation been working to help children achieve third grade reading proficiency, and how have you engaged and worked with Head Start in that effort?
So we have been involved with the campaign, as was mentioned during my bio, really focused. We've been working, again, since 1970 in the space I might call more the K through 12 area. And frankly, a little frustrated, or more than frustrated, that we weren't seeing, again, realizing that we're just one player, but really not feeling the impact from our investments. And so, like many of us on the call, really took a look at the research that told us we really need to start early, that we really have so much return on investment in looking at what we can do for very young children and families. And that led us to starting to work in the 0 to 8 space, and in more particularly working in really looking at the issue of reading success by 4th grade and its importance to a children's trajectory for educational success. Our work with Head Start, although we've been in this community, and Head Start, I might add, our local Head Start partner is just one of the, I think, highest performing Head Starts that certainly I'm aware of. And again, I probably have, touched and been involved with some other Head Starts, but I really do want to put a shout out to our local Holyoke Chicopee Springfield Head Start. The way that we really got involved with them was because of Educare. And Gladys did a really good job of explaining what Educare is. But in Springfield, what happened, I'll try to get through this quickly, is we had a very large early childhood center close in the city of Springfield that had over 300 slots for 0 to 5-year-olds, and it closed rather abruptly. And we, as a funder in the early education space, were very concerned about that and wanted to make sure that we did not lose that capacity, both the slots, but which were largely voucher slots, but also we had a building that we were concerned was going to be foreclosed. Well, long story short, we called up the Educare Learning Network. I had been fortunate enough to meet Michael Burke from the Buffett Early Childhood Fund, and said we had this experience in Springfield, and could we possibly develop an Educare? That initial building and that facility wasn't, we weren't able to develop that into an Educare, frankly, because it didn't meet the quality standards of the network. But through some rather unusual circumstances, we stopped looking at Educare, frankly. But a few years later, we became very fortunate to be connected with a very major donor outside of the state of Massachusetts, who was willing to help Springfield build an Educare. And to do an Educare, I think Gladys mentioned this, or maybe Yasmina, you must partner with a Head Start. They are a quality provider, and therefore they're the partners in all Educares across the country. And we were very fortunate to call our Head Start up and say, hey, we're really interested in building a new Educare in Springfield. We think the kids, the children and families in Springfield deserve this. We want it to be a showcase for the state, as we would be the only Educare in the state of Massachusetts. And our wonderful Head Start partner said, okay, we'll do that with you. And that basically has led to us working over several years to open the first Educare in the state of Massachusetts. It's required us to raise a total of, thus far, $20 million, $13 million to build a building, and then we set out to build an endowment to help support the operating costs of Educare. And we had our licensing review from our state just today, and we will open Educare Springfield in January of 2020.
That's exciting. Mary, what advice would you offer to funders and community stakeholders about investing in quality early child education in partnership with Head Start?
So just to show you, I'll just mention here for a second that this is the building in Springfield that will be opening in January. I thought I could share that with you. I guess my answer to your question about how can funders partner, my first response would be ask Head Start. I think our Head Start partners across the country are the best people and organizations to help us as funders understand their needs and what is important to them. So that would be, frankly, my first answer to your question. Moving from that, I think that at least in our case, and I'm sure in others, there's always, programmatic needs in Head Start. There's also capital needs and, facility or supply needs, and those are sort of the simple things. But I think the capacity building work that particularly Gladys spoke about, helping other providers and other organizations learn the Educare best practice training modules, that's a space where I think we can help other Head Starts who may not be in a position to work with a partner funder to develop an Educare building. It's frankly a very big lift and not for every community, nor is it meant necessarily to be in every community. And so I think the capacity building that can come out of a demonstration site like an Educare and or just capacity building work that funders can do that I think is very meaningful to organizations but doesn't marry a funder to a Head Start in sort of as a life commitment. We all know as funders that while we might like to support our our Head Start partners for a very long period of time, sometimes we're unable to do that, but a lasting impact can be through building the capacity of a Head Start partner. But I will again say that I think those decisions about what that capacity building should be is best driven by Head Start, who knows best what they are looking for.
Thank you, Mary. Gladys, the same question. What advice would you offer to funders and community stakeholders about investing in quality early child education in partnership with Head Start?
One of the things that that has worked for us and that we always have anytime that we're talking about the program is not only the impact that we have on the children's life, is the impact that we have in the family's life, how our families are the consumers of every one of the places where we are, and how important it is that that we educate families, that we educate the children, and they are going to be the workforce of tomorrow. So thinking about how are we developing the workforce for the places, the communities and where we are is very important. And like Mary was saying, Head Start is the best of the partners that we have. They allow us to create this environment where we can try so many different strategies and then look and measure and see how much of an impact we've had in all of our audiences, from our teachers, our families, our children. And so understanding that this is not a program that is stagnant, it's a program that is evolving constantly, that is looking at the needs of the community and is bringing strategies and is bringing results that match the needs of our community. So I think that the fact that what any organization gets when they are aligning with an Educare and a Head Start program is just that willingness and that culture of inquiry and of growth, and that interest that we have in children. And when the funders hear about this, they usually get very excited. We're able to give outcomes, we're able to give data of what is it that is happening when we do our intervention with the families and the children. So I think that that's part of the conversation that we have with funders, and everybody has a different area in the child development that they would like to talk more or work more with. And usually inside a Head Start program, we have the conversations about it. We not only talk about education, we talk about health, we talk about nutrition, we talk about services for children with disabilities. There's so many things that we're bringing into the fold that it is very exciting just to bring it out and to talk to others about what are the kind of impact that we're doing in the communities that we're servicing children.
Thank you. I'd like to bring Yasmina back into the conversation. Yasmina, what role can corporate sponsors play in supporting Head Start, and what have you seen on the local, state, and national levels?
You know, before I answer that, I'd just like to, I'm just like tearing up listening to my colleagues talk about what happened in Springfield and how Miami, you know, just the total engagement and commitment and passion that has led to these wonderful outcomes. But I'd just like to acknowledge that, you know, as a national association, we're very proud of our advocacy that brings Head Start good funding as good as possible and has over the last decade. But what enables Head Starts to be the best that they can be, as the ones you heard about, is that additional funding from community philanthropists, from businesses, all the other collaborators. Sometimes it's the city or the county also that pitches in, and so it's very, very important, the whole community participation in every aspect of that. So really grateful to Mary and Gladys in the United Way, the people who are represented on this. But to answer your question on the corporate sponsors, this is a very brief study of PNC. PNC Bank it's interesting because they have support for early childhood education on every level. First of all, their local branches are very involved in their respective communities in many different ways. One of the significant new ways is also not new, it's not new at all, is the volunteers who undertake projects in Head Start programs. They also like Head Start because they find it's of high quality. And so they then, after there's a project is over, the employees can require or ask for grants for the program from PNC, and they are granted, and they're not huge grants, but they make a difference on some of the things they do. Most recently, they gave $5 million to match Donors Choose funds for eligible pre-K and Head Start projects. So that's on a larger scale than community by community. They also, again, they put their selves along with their money. So many of the PNC employees, they sit on local Head Start boards and policy councils and get very involved and provide their expertise. Many times, you know, very specific expertise. Then they also, for the whole communities, they fund development of materials by Sesame Street and Mr. Rogers Productions for the materials that are available to all the parents in the community and providers. And on a most sort of out there, going to the future and sort of taking care of that, they're funding the HeadStarter Network, which is a sister organization. It's a separate nonprofit set up by NHSA to allow to really accelerate and promote innovation in Head Start. So it's a great way of a corporation that's acting on all the levels, local and in market-wide, and then nationally.
Yasmina, Ed Ziegler often called Head Start the laboratory of early childhood education. How do you see that playing out today, and what innovative things have come out of Head Start?
So as we talked about, and I think we have a slide with a picture of Ed's book where he called it the laboratory, America's most successful educational experiment. So both the sort of things that about Head Start that many people are now trying to look to as they're developing parent education and the health component, plus early Head Start have all been really innovation coming from Head Start. There is, before there were standards for anything in early childhood. Head Start had standards. Now states have standards. Some communities even add things into it. There's licensing standards. There's just like some way of supporting the quality. But to me, the most important thing is what's happening in the communities of everybody who is in the who is on the call and others, which is the Head Start's ability to implement those standards of quality while serving very different populations in very different communities. And that's the innovation. They're being very innovative, just making sure that the families and the communities are served best in the context in which they are. So we try to periodically, once a year, when we have our Early Childhood Innovation Summit, we try to highlight those innovations. But one of the things that we really believe is that Head Start does have a culture of innovation, even if we don't think always of it that way, or Head Start doesn't think, that those local adaptations, they're really, really rich ways of doing something new that advances things.
So staying on that, on the innovation, how does the work you do actually encourage innovation?
Okay, so this is back to the HeadStarter network, which is really works with all of early childhood. This sort of says, okay, so there are innovations that started in Head Start. Head Start has a culture of innovation. Head Start probably has, there are many lessons that the rest of the country can use, and some states are, for instance, modeling their standards on Head Start standards. But we think that there are all these forces that are shaping children's lives today, and certainly as they grow up. You know, the forces of technology, the virtual and augmented reality, big data, AI. I mean, it's, I had a run-in with it yesterday, trying to just get something that I needed online, and it was not, you know, it got messed up. What we know about neuroscience, the social psychology, process innovation, design thinking. And so all those things, the HeadStarter network brings the think tanks and early childhood innovators, the Head Start field, the foundations, impact investors, business researchers, and venture philanthropists to really just work on creating the kinds of early childhood products, services, attitudes, which will make children flourish now and in the future. So on the next slide, we do the network. The HeadStarter Network Innovation does most of these things through innovation events, and they have all these people that I just listed as participating in it. And it's a very creative, exciting mix when we meet together either for a hackathon or an incubator for tech and early ed. And our various, we had a catalyst in Chicago on the intersection of neuroscience, early childhood, and technology. What came out of that was this absolutely amazing project that we're in the middle of right now, which is to define some guidelines for the development of artificial intelligence products and projects. A professor of engineering from the University of Colorado said, you know, I need to teach my students what are the boundaries, what are the guidelines, what are the guardrails. So we're having Our current initiative are the Artificial Intelligence Early Childhood Education Guardians. People named themselves, this group, working group named itself, and we're writing guidelines for artificial intelligence, some people call it augmented intelligence, tech in early childhood education, and we're involving everybody who needs to be at the table and everybody who wants to be at the table in the development of that. So if there's anybody on this call, please let us know, and hoping that we have sort of looked at and been part of the UNICEF development of AI guidelines. We have also talked to the IEEE, that's an largest engineering association. They're participating with us. We've looked at the EU requirements, and it's just, but we're going to make it very much appropriate to the US early childhood education, all of it. We also, you all know, I'm sure you know, the issues of the workforce, early childhood workforce, the being able to recruit them and compensate them and keep them, retain them. And we are just thinking that only some disruptive thinking may begin to offer solutions. We're having the same conversation as long as I can remember, actually, 30 years that we have just been caught in that, what Gwen Morgan called the trilemma. And we're going to try to partner to find new credentialing methods, new ways of getting people the knowledge, the ability, and the credentials to actually be engaged and involved workforce. We're going to have an event in April when we're again going to do one of those very multidisciplinary gathering of everybody and work on that with some new thoughts we're learning from other industries. And then we're redefining parent engagement. We've developed a tool which with the University of Chicago, and after very long and expensive research, we have a tool which actually helps programs evaluate the outcomes. How successful are they in meeting what parents expect from Head Start? And the original research was a surprise to everybody. We all thought people were trying to, or hoping to get, jobs, to get help with housing, to get help with various things. What the Head Start parents, and this was a stratified study, what they found was that what parents wanted most was to make sure that they were the kind of parents who could raise the children, so the children grow up to have a better life, to be successful, to succeed. So this instrument starts the conversations that in the end, when they're converted to numbers, to data, actually show programs how effective they are in meeting the parental expectations. So that's kind of redefining parent engagement, realizing that today's parents are different than the parents of Head Start 30 years ago or 50 years ago or 55 when it started. So we're very excited about working on that.
Thank you so much. I think we are transitioning now, Sarah, correct?
Yes, thank you, Yasmina. Thank you, Gladys and Mary. And thank you, Jennifer, for facilitating those conversations with our presenters today. We are now going to transition to Q&A, and I would encourage everyone on the call to share any questions that might have come to you during the presentations in the chat box, and I will be sharing them with the presenters and hearing their thoughts and comments to those questions. One of the question that was just recently posted, Yasmina, so I'll stick with you for a moment, was a question that was coming to my mind as you were talking about the AI guidelines. And so Paula Bindle-Smith was asking if you could share a little bit more about the content that you hope to include in those guidelines and what that will look like.
So we started by reviewing the other content. As I say, UNICEF had done a lot of, because they have a whole thing on the rights of children. So we're looking at that. We're looking at both the guidelines that protect from harmful, unexpected consequences. What happens with facial recognition of children if you're trying to determine whether they are undernourished or whatever. We sort of want to make sure, but also we are trying to also think of the positive ways in which AI might actually be supporting the work of providers or parents, that they're not necessarily anything that will work with children directly. I mean, that's sort of a little, our whole profession has a thing about screens. So, but there's, as I say, AI is sort of in our lives, whether we know it or not, and we'd like to be a little more early childhood folks to be more in charge of what happens there. So right now, if Paula would like to join the group, we'd like to, welcome her, and sort of do all the readings and everything. There's quite a bit of reading and so on. And we're also seeing participation in the group. Also, there will be people who will be reviewing it because they teach design or engineering, and they will know kind of how that sounds to engineers. And then there will be early childhood people who are saying, but what about, have you thought of such and such, and so on.
Thank you, that's wonderful. And it's just so amazing the way that you're being so forward thinking and looking at the ways that technology can be an asset, and also something that we need to think about the protections around it as well. We had another question come in for you, Yasmina, from Katie Kibbe, asking if there are any innovative practices for engaging today's families, particularly given the challenges around work opportunities, limited engagement during traditional school hours, et cetera. You were saying at the end of your comments about looking for new and innovative ways around family engagement. Can you share what some of the innovative practices are that you are identifying?
So for that, we're learning from programs, from Head Start programs. We asked them, and quite a number of them said that it is getting harder and harder for exactly the reasons you're saying, which is that some parents work a couple of or 3 jobs or 4 jobs and have less time just in their lives and less bandwidth and so on. Other programs have sent us in their responses, have sent us a number of things that they are doing to actually understand the families, both new ways of getting engaged. Some of it might be via online communities and so on. Others are really different kinds of gatherings in the centers and so on. So I think what we want to do is put all the positive, because there were 2 kinds of answers when we asked people. There were people who really felt, okay, our poor parents, they don't have a chance because they're overworked and they're busy and so on. So that's it. For parent engagement, we can't have it. Others were saying, well, these parents, they're more interested in their tablets, and maybe they're not talking to the children, maybe they're not as interested. We love the programs that actually, and that's what we're going to somehow compile, people who are actually experimenting. with different ways to engage parents. I think that's what we need to really look at all those experiments and get them. There was one where a big thing in Head Start is that if a child ever leaves the adult supervision, the program is going into recompetition. And so this one program just said, hey, maybe we're not, from what we know from neuroscience, young children learn routines and they respond to them, and if they learn them, they sort of stick to them. So they redesigned their whole orientation to the program to involve the parents, to involve the staff, to involve it. So it became like a 3-week thing with a much smaller group coming in and so on. They collected good data on that, and it really has worked in totally reducing the fear of, is that child going to dart out and start to go home on the 5th day of being in the program, and so on. So those are the kinds of things that we want to just really highlight, so the programs that want to try something like that could be trying. So their experiment, the whole thing, the one thing that Head Start in going through a phase when it was very prescriptive, I think people were afraid to experiment. I think we have done a lot to change the standard, so it's more about being able to prove outcomes and look at your systems for tracing things. So hopefully that will enable more experimentation and more learning from each other. We also have a community, online community called The Block, where various roles in Head Start actually can communicate and share some of those things. So we're excited about that.
Mm-hmm. So I thought the slide where it was showing the HeadStarter network and the many different types of innovation events that the National Head Start Association has been sponsoring and organizing and participating in. Someone was asking if there were any opportunities for local funders to connect with the HeadStarter network, and possibly opportunities for local funders to possibly replicate something like these hackathons or innovation summits in their own community, kind of doing this on a smaller scale.
And people have actually been doing that already. I know after our first hackathon, there was one in Massachusetts, I think on the Cape or somewhere, and I was sort of pleased that it got. So yeah, we'd be really happy. The HeadStarter network is totally non-traditional in that it's a very open network for all the various categories who want to connect and learn and even get one piece of it. They don't have to, pay dues and come to whatever and so on, but to really become interacting learners from each other. So we'd be really happy to, share everything we've learned in doing these events, and then hopefully get everybody together at least once a year during the Innovation Summit, so that we can some of the best examples and some of the best conversations that can take place there.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. So this question is for you again, Yasmina, but I'd also like to bring in Gladys and Mary to hear their thoughts and suggestions around this. Someone was asking kind of, getting down to the brass tacks of this work, how do I find a Head Start in my community? And what are some of the best ways for starting that conversation about how we can work together to support children and families? Maybe we could start with you, Yasmina, and then move to Gladys and then to Mary.
Well, the thing that comes to mind is that I just was delighted when you all asked us to do this, so that we can even get on the map with the communities that CGLR is in. And I think one way, I don't know. I'd like to hear more from Mary and Gladys first.
Okay, well, Gladys, are you there? Can you chime in and share, kind of given your...
And the question was?
So kind of getting down to brass tacks. So imagine I'm a local funder or stakeholder in my community. What are some of those first steps? How do I connect with Head Start in my community? And, you know, what are some of the best ways to start that conversation about how we can partner together to support children and families, given your experience as a funder in Miami-Dade?
One of the things that happens, it's, you know, it's when the Head Start organization brings those unusual suspects, those unusual funders to meetings, and where we're talking about the work that we're doing, and where we go and visit them to let them know what is that Head Start is doing, so they can participate. We have a great movement of volunteers, and our volunteers come from corporations and organizations in our community that call United Way, and they would like to be involved in the projects that United Way is working with. And that's when they have that first experience with Head Start. And once they have a first experience, you know, there's no way that they cannot come back. And so we work in tandem with the organizations that are wanting to expand on their social responsibility, and we inform them about the work that Head Start is doing. And that brings them together, and that brings them to have a greater understanding of the impact and the work. So if anybody is wanting to be more of a part of their local Head Start, you know, first you can go to the eclectic and you can find where our programs are, and contact them directly and get to know what is it and in what counties in around them is it that we're providing the work that we're doing. But like I said, it has worked for us when we have this connection with the corporations in our community. When they learn about the work that we're doing, then we learn about the passion that each of the corporations have as part of the culture of that corporation, and we marry those two things together. So there is a better communication, and we can, you know, do the best that both of us can do for each other.
I love it. So the important role of matchmaker.
Exactly.
I was just going to say, you know, it's really important to do it sort of thoughtfully and make a good connection. So it's, you know, the local Head Start stars, NHSA can certainly connect people where, you know, I mean, we know Gladys's work, and we connect everybody that we can to her, as we did you guys. But we can also, you know, we'd be glad to make sure that that they meet some really exciting Head Start programs.
So, Mary, I'd love to hear your thoughts in response to this question. It's kind of like that getting down to brass tacks kind of question, how you go about finding Head Start in your community and initiating that conversation and connecting the dots. Any advice that you would share to other local funders or stakeholders on the call with us today? And also, before you respond, I just wanted to let everybody know we've just launched that brief survey poll that I mentioned at the beginning of the conversation. So while you're paying very close attention to our presenters and their response to these questions, just take a moment to respond. But so now to you, Mary, any thoughts or suggestions about initiating that conversation and partnership with Head Start?
Oh. Mary, this is Suzanne. Do you have your phone muted? She doesn't. Sarah, can you go on and we'll see if we can come back to Mary?
Definitely. So let me see. So while we are working with Mary to get her back on the conversation or connected, I wanted to reach out to Chris-Ann Gale. She shared a comment in the chat box saying that Trust for Learning supports a network of Head Start providers looking to offer ideal learning approaches to children and families. And she offered to join the conversation and share some comments about that. So I'm going to see if we can make sure she is unmuted. Do that.
Chris-Ann?
Yeah, I think I was unmuted. Can you hear me?
Yes, go right ahead.
Wonderful, thank you.
Yeah, great, and thank you so much for hosting this. I'm joined here by my colleague, Ali Katie, and I wanted to chime in to say that Trust for Learning, we're a national education collaborative fund focused on strengthening equity in early childhood education, and we do that through helping to support providers and approaches, various high quality approaches for all children, and particularly in the public sector. And one of the strategies we've been using over the past year is to partner with Head Start providers, those who are offering very innovative approaches to early childhood education. I know Yasmina is familiar with our network already. But we're trying to support them in offering programs like Montessori or Waldorf or Tools of the Mind, real child-led, child-centered pedagogical approaches in early childhood education through the Head Start model, and trying to give them a peer network to connect to and to engage each other in conversations around program structure, curriculum, evaluation, because they're all facing similar challenges as Head Start providers and as what we call ideal learning providers. So I wanted to mention that, and Ali, who's with me here, she oversees that work, which we're going to be expanding next year, and she can provide just a couple more details about it for those who might be interested in learning more about the network.
Yes, so the network is called the Ideal Learning Head Start Network. And as Chrisanne mentioned, it was designed to convene this group of innovative early learning providers. And the explicit goals of this network is to, one, support existing Head Start programs that use ideal learning models, very high quality, innovative approaches, and strengthening their practice. Two, to influence systems change at the national level by educating Head Start to be more open to ideal learning approaches. And third, to lay the necessary groundwork for more ideal learning providers to enter the Head Start space. So this three-pronged approach really focuses on current Head Start providers, high quality, and then the first is Head Start providers, the second is high quality approaches seeking to become Head Start providers and serve more children, and the third is really influencing systems change to make it more possible for programs around the country to serve these underserved communities and really provide this high quality approach that we know works for every child. And as Christine mentioned, we are looking to grow this network. So if you're interested in becoming a member or know someone that would be interested, please reach out. We're really excited about where this is heading, and we know that this initial group has found a lot of benefit from this group, and we're looking to continue to build and grow on that work.
That is wonderful. Thank you both for sharing that. And I believe Chrisanne had shared in the chat box your email address. And so, Ali, if it's okay, maybe we could include this as one of the resources. If it's okay, if you're interested in growing the network, we could include it in the email that goes out on Monday to registered webinar participants so that they could follow up with you, possibly?
Absolutely, please do. That would be great. Thank you.
Okay, that's wonderful. Well, thank you for sharing. And I wanted to share a comment in response. Well, actually, Mary, are you able to join us via audio right now? I thought it looked like it was working.
I'm hoping you can hear me. Is that the case?
Yes, yes.
Okay,
wonderful.
great. Sorry, we had a storm here and I got disconnected, and then for some reason I had a hard time getting back in. My apologies.
No, yeah, Mother Nature can throw curveballs no matter what. So do you have any thoughts or advice to folks on the webinar today who might be interested in understanding, so what are some of those first steps that they can take in terms of starting a conversation, connecting with Head Start in their community to achieve these shared goals?
Well, unfortunately, when I was off the call, I didn't hear from my colleague, so I'm not sure if I'm repeating anything. I don't know that I have any brilliant responses. Honestly, you know, it's as simple as reaching out and picking up the phone. I think Yasmina made it pretty clear that the Head Start community is very interested in partnering with their peers, as well as the funder community, the business and corporate community, and we have a lot to share, and we have all got, you know, we're all rowing in the same boat, I think, in terms of improving the lives of children and family. And I think it's simply reaching out and having a conversation about how we can help each other.
Great, yeah. And I also noticed that Heather Craiglow posted a link in the chat box as another way to kind of reach out and connect with Head Start Collaboration Office. Is a great first step. So we'll include that in the links that go out in the email on Monday. Jennifer Frank Dole just posted a question about asking for information about the Early Childhood Education Workforce Catalyst event next year. I don't know if that's anything that's already planned or scheduled, and I'm assuming that question would be for you, Yasmina. Any information to share on that yet?
Yeah, it will be in April or May. It will be in Massachusetts, and if I get the email, we can certainly send you more information about it. It is to be sort of combining and looking at some new thoughts and ideas. We have quite a bunch of people who will be able to collect that to bring that, and then to sort of catalyze something, truly to catalyze something new.
Wonderful, thank you. So we are getting close to the end of our time together. I would just share another request, encourage everybody to take a moment and share their thoughts and feedback in the survey poll that we have posted. Love to get your feedback, understanding kind of where we're hitting the nail on the head and where we can improve these conversations. Would also invite you to reach out to us and share your thoughts and ideas for topics that we could cover in future GLR Learning Tuesdays sessions. And then now, before we close, I'd just love to reach back out to each of our presenters and also to our moderator today. Jennifer, I know that the Maddox Foundation is working, you know, to support education from birth through career, and any thoughts or advice or ideas that you have that you'd like to share about working with Head Start based upon your experience in Lee County and in Hobbs, New Mexico.
I guess what I would say is letting the Head Start take the lead, and really supporting their vision has been our best bet. They really are great folks in our experience, in our local experience, but I suspect this is probably the experience of most folks. And really, you know, just creating that space for local innovation that responds to the kiddos and their families in your local community has I think paid dividends for us. And so I think that'll be it.
Great, thank you. Letting them lead and building on that strength. So any thoughts that you would have to add to that? Gladys, maybe we could start with you, or any final thoughts before we wrap up the conversation that you'd like to share that we haven't touched on already?
I think that, you know, being Educare, and we're the only Educare here in Florida, but thinking about the partnership that Educare and HeadStart have, and the opportunity that they have given to, HeadStart has given to all of our programs to walk that pathway and that journey of innovation is so important for the work that we're doing. One of the things that we have done is that servicing in a mixed income model, where we have children who are coming with the needs that our families from HeadStart come in, and then children who are being families who are being able to pay privately for their way, and being able to measure and see that the interventions that we do are shedding the same results for both children. So that, you know, is telling you have the right medicine, you're giving it at the right frequency, and you're giving it at the right dosage. Those are the kinds of conversations that that we want people to focus in, is that Head Start is doing such a great job educating parents, children, and others into what is it that children need in order to be successful. And that we need to do more of it, and that we need to continue to help and work together, so we can, like it has been mentioned today in so many different ways. The old model of doing the one thing for all of the children doesn't work anymore, and it's only through these collaborations that Head Start has with organizations in education and others that we're going to come up with the different solutions that each of our children in the different populations are going to need in order to meet and be the best that they can be together with their families.
That's wonderful. Thank you. Anything that you would like to share before we close, Mary?
I guess I'll kind of take a different twist for a second and just really talk about, I think we need to, as funders, really support the policy and advocacy work of our Head Start partners. I know that Yasmina's leadership, that many of our Head Start leaders are in Washington and talking to their legislators, but I think it's important that funders both support that work, but also join in the voice of the importance of Head Start. I mean, after all, a lot of what we've talked about today, and particularly what Yasmina has gone over in terms of the work of Head Start and the innovation that's happening, takes both public and private and, you know, federal resources, and we can never stop really being the voice of children and families, and working to make sure that they get the adequate resources that are needed. So I would just add that piece.
Wonderful point to make, very critical. Anything else that you would add to that, Yasmina?
I just, well, thank you. I mean, I have sort of, I'm tearing with just hearing all the good sense and feeling from the funders. I just think that it really takes a community to be doing, I mean, I know it sounds trite, but to raise a child and to raise the children, and Head Start children and the Head Start people who care for them in the programs really need the participation. So really gratified to hear Jennifer and Mary and Gladys really express that commitment, and hope that that sort of becomes a like an ongoing movement toward even closer ties, and appreciate also the support for the advocacy that that is so important. But the commitment to Head Start, as I mean, it was the nation's first commitment to make sure that every child has a chance, and I think it's something that we cannot and we don't want to abandon.
Thank you. Thank you. It was, it seems like it was ahead of its time 54 years ago, and it's continuing to be ahead of its time and looking at opportunities for new innovations to support children. So I really want to thank all of our presenters and our moderator today. Again, thank you so much. I know this is a busy time of year, for taking the time out of your work day to share this great work and the opportunities and the importance of partnering with Head Start in supporting children and families in all of our communities and across the country. I want to remind you that we've got a lot more wonderful GLR Learning Tuesdays webinars scheduled. One more for 2019, and then we've got a full calendar scheduled for the beginning of 2020. So these are the next 3 conversations scheduled, but I hope you'll continue to save this time, Tuesdays at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and join in for more of these online learning conversations. And have a great rest of your week. Thank you again, everyone.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, everybody.